there are a lot of big question marks when it comes to this 2024-25 Oilers team and how they're going to look heading into next season, Liam. This is a week where Ken Holland's not here. He's not coming to Vegas. I think that right there, and I know Dreger had the tweet about he has a role if he wants one. I think it is how do I want to word this? I think it is a very perimeter role with the team. I don't think it would be a position where he has a lot of power. I think it would be more of an advisory role. I don't know if Ken Holland wants to continue working if that's the role. And I don't think the Oilers are going to keep him around in any sort of a POHO or general manager role. I think that change is coming, and I think the proof of that is, again, if there was mutual interest in him having a position of power, I think he would be here right now.
Yeah, I think him not being here really just speaks volumes to all of this. And it's actually quite interesting he's not here, if this could be his last year, for the idea of the final farewell for Ken in front of all his GM buddies, the last draft in this kind of environment too, because next year they're just going to go like an NFL style, I believe it's how it's going to look. But I wonder if this role, if he stays, will be what they've done with Ken Hitchcock, where Ken Hitchcock is like a special advisor to the head coach. And basically Ken Hitchcock lives in California or wherever it is that's hot. And Knobloch, whoever calls him whenever they need, and he'll send some advice back to them as well. I actually think he works quite closely with Bakersfield now that I say that, with just some help in there with Colin Chalk and his staff. But I just don't think it's... How do I word it? Like, keeping Holland around, I don't think it'd be the worst thing ever as a GM role, but I do think, again, this team needs a new look. I asked Zach and Kuhn this question yesterday, and I'm curious what you think, Ty. If Holland is done, which all indications would lead to that, what is his legacy in Edmonton?
His legacy is, and this is going to sound very harsh, if I had, the first word that came to my mind is failure. Listen, I'm not a massive anti-Ken Holland guy, and there are people who are running around on Twitter and whatnot right now being like, he didn't make one good move, and they're going, you can't credit him for the Zach Hyman thing because no one saw that coming. And if you're going to do that whole song and dance, then you can do it the other way. And you can sit there and say, well, no one saw Jack Campbell becoming a AHL goalie after what he did last year or that last season in Toronto. So I'm not totally against Ken Holland. He did a lot of really good things here. Getting Nuge done, getting Hyman here, the Stuart Skinner contract. I believe, and this might be viewed as a homer take right now, but I believe that a year from now, Stuart Skinner will be viewed as a top 10 goalie in the NHL, without a doubt. He signed for $2.6 million for 2 more seasons. Ken Holland deserves praise for how he handled that, even if he butchered the Jack Campbell thing. Did Evander Kane fall into his lap, and did he eventually sign him to a contract that I don't think is very good? Yes, but he's got Zach Hyman. Did the Darnell Nurse thing, not really go their way, and did they play that poorly? Sure, but they kept Nuge on a bargain contract. I don't know. He was a middle-of-the-pack GM in his time here. He's not a bottom 5 GM in the league. He's far from a top 5 GM in the league. He's probably somewhere, if you had to grade every GM over the last 5 years, he's probably somewhere from 15 to 20. And if he would have been a top 10 GM, we're probably talking about Connor McDavid having a ring right now. So I'm not going to sit here and fully bash him and say he's the worst thing that's ever happened to this organization, but he's far from the best. And a different hire probably means this organization is a Stanley Cup champion at some point over the last 3-4 seasons. Is that fair?
I think saying failure is a bit harsh, to be honest. I think he did a lot of good things, and you look at the runs the Oilers had before they had one playoff appearance without him. Yeah. And then comes in, they get 5 in a row, and I know one of them is that Chicago series, so we'll call it 4.5. But yeah. I think he did the good outweighed the bad. The problem was he never won, but he was just 1-2 goals away from potentially doing that. But there was definitely moves that I think we all would have liked to have seen more of, and the contracts, some of them, like the Campbell one, of course, the Kane one is an aging very well. Nurse kind of stranglehold in the team right now, but I think I would give him a B- overall with just the whole package, the stability he was able to bring to the team, bringing in guys like Hyman, Kulak, Ekholm, sorry. So I give him a B-, but I'm glad.
So Sorry, some people are pushing back on me. Troy's in the chat. Sorry, Tyler, you're wrong. Look at this team over the last handful of years. He did better than most in the last 20 years. That can't be the bar. The bar can't be that they don't suck anymore. The bar with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl has to be rings. Ken Holland was here for 5 years. Yes, one of the goals he accomplished was taking them from what they were at the time, a non-playoff team, and turning them back into a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. But they had to win. And his legacy is defined by that loss on Monday night. If they win that, and I guess maybe that's unfair of me. I can maybe see that angle because it was a one-goal hockey game in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, and if he wins it, his tenure here is justified, and the $25 million you gave him is more than justified, and all of that stuff. But they didn't win. And they just made their first Stanley Cup final in the Connor McDavid era. And you need to put blame at the feet of someone. So it's not unfair. It's really not, because results matter in this game. So, Mr. Burns, I mean, the GM doesn't dictate who gets injured. The Oilers were remarkably healthy in the Ken Holland era. Remarkably healthy. And you can sit there and say, well, Draisaitl was banged up and Connor was banged up and they didn't have Evander Kane. Still, those guys were playing, and they were playing 20-plus minutes a night. The injury thing is not an excuse. I woke up and chose violence from Rusty. I don't think so. Like, again, we can't, with Connor McDavid, be sitting here and be saying we're okay with not having a Stanley Cup championship in year 9 heading into what'll be year 10 or whatever, or what will be year 9 of his career. Like, Ken Holland did a lot of good. Matthias Ekholm deal, A+. Hyman deal, A+. He probably should have gone long-term with Bush. I won't give him a grade there. Nuge deal, A+ for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Like, he made some really, really good moves. I love the Warren Foegele for Ethan Bear trade in hindsight. I was wrong about that one in the moment, but they ended up getting a 20-goal third-line scorer this season. That worked. A lot of the stuff he did was very, very good. And he put them in a spot as he leaves and is no longer the GM of this hockey team. We're heading into next year. They are the favorites to win the Stanley Cup. He deserves credit for that. But there were awful, awful misses. The Darnell Nurse contract was a terrible, terrible decision. Not going long-term with Evan Bouchard, you probably should have done that. Jack Campbell, awful, 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 awful decision. I could say awful 30 more times, and it still wouldn't even be close to what it should be. There were massive, massive misses. The wins were good. The misses were huge. And that's why I'm just saying he's a middle-of-the-pack GM. He's not a top 5, top 7, top 10 GM. He is, I think if you want to be optimistic about him, he's closer to 10. If you want to be pessimistic about him, he's closer to 20, but he's somewhere in there. I don't understand why, and flat cap didn't work his way, but guess what? Luke, and I totally understand that. Flat cap didn't work his way. 31 other teams dealt with the flat cap. It's not like it was only the Oilers dealing with a flat cap in this time. Everyone had to work through that. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm spicy because I'm still upset like Lance says. I don't think Tyler's over the loss. No, like, I'm obviously not over the loss. The Oilers lost in Game 7 of the fucking Stanley Cup Final. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh boy, get them next year, guys. Like, no, that sucks. And the fact that this was the first time they got to the Stanley Cup Final in year 5 of Holland running the ship, that's not okay to me. Up until this year, they hadn't even won a game in the Western Conference Final. So, I don't know. One of the best GMs of all time. He did a lot of his good GMing when there was no salary cap. So I don't know if I'm even going to fully give him a lot of love for that. Anyways, yeah, get the show up to 200 likes so I can jump in the pool and cool off. Liam, anything? Can we move on from this? Are we over it? Or do you have anything else to add?
Everyone else just gave me like a couple of sentences, but you clearly had a lot to get off your chest about it.
And I didn't even know you were going to ask me that. So that was all right off the dome. But, like, I don't know. Like, Liam, they're going to buy out Jack Campbell at some point in the next 48 hours.
Yep.
I'm going to be in my mid-30s by the time we're done with that buyout. That drives me bananas. We're going to have to look at the Puckpedia page for the next 6 years and look at Jack Campbell. That's unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I do think the Cup needed to be part of this run, whenever it may be, but luckily it's over now. I guess you could say we can move on. I don't even know any of the names that are in the running for this position. It's real. I know Jeff Jackson's gonna take over for the time being and all that stuff, but it feels so strange, doesn't it, that the Oilers are gonna go into free agency in 5 days, and not have a general manager. Does that not seem extremely odd to you? Has this happened often? I don't know if I've seen this.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on because I'm kind of over the rant and all of that. Let's just get into some other stuff. Let's look ahead a little bit here because the Ken Holland era is now in the past. This is a new era for the Oilers. This is the era where they were that close to winning it all, and now they got to finish the job going forward.
What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.